Hello and welcome everyone to another Sales Hacker webinar. Thanks for hanging out with us for the next 45 minutes to an hour. I can see you all coming in now, so we will just wait for more people to join us. But as people start trickling into the Zoom room, I want to run through a little bit of housekeeping and then obviously what we're going to be talking about. I'm extremely excited for this one. We're talking about the link between sales happiness, performance, and technology. And this is not just anecdotal research we're going to be sharing. This is actually a Harvard Business Review analytic services that was commissioned by our partners at Freshworks. So always cool when we can share, hard research and data with the sales hacker community. And hopefully this can inform some of your strategy moving forward for the rest of 2020. It's been a crazy year, so happiness is now more important than ever. So hopefully it can inform your strategies and all the way into 2021. Really quickly, housekeeping before I introduce my awesome guest. Number one, don't be shy. Say hello in the chat. It makes it so much more enjoyable for myself and our panelists when we know who we're rocking with. So there is a chat section at the bottom. Please go in, introduce your name, your title, company you're with. We love to hear who we're hanging out with. Secondly, we do these for the community. So we want to hear from you, and we want to be putting this in context that's relevant for you and your business. So we have some meaty slides that we're going to get through, a lot of really great content. But if you have clarification questions, you want to see how this would work maybe in your world, we're down to answer your questions. So there's a Q&A box. It is different than the chat. Go in and answer any relevant questions. I'll be manning that Q&A box and trying to be the voice of the community, if you will. Thirdly, we are recording this. So if you've ever joined a Sales Hacker webinar, you know that we always put this in your inbox within about 24 hours. You will get the slides. And without a doubt, I get at least 5 people emailing me, hey, where are the slides when it's recording? I promise they're coming. It just takes a little time to clean it all up. But that's the boring stuff out of the way. Now I get to introduce my amazing panelists. I am joined by Maravik Becker. Maravik, welcome back.
Thanks so much, Scott. Thanks for having me. And I'm excited to be here to talk about this topic today.
It's going to be a fun one. And you're like a Sales Hacker OG now. This is your second one under your belt.
Thank you. I like that title. Yeah, I'm excited. I've done a few of these, and I really have enjoyed each topic in the conversation. But today, I think we're gonna delve into some really interesting subject around sales happiness. So I'm excited to be talking to you about it.
Yeah, this is going to be really cool. And for those who don't know, so Maravik is a senior sales leader at Freshworks. Maravik, do you want to give just maybe a quick 2-3 minute background of what I usually call your superhero origin story? How did you get to where you're at today?
Sure thing. Thanks, Scott. So I'm Maravik Becker. I'm a senior sales leader at Freshworks. That's a fancy title for a sales leader managing an account executive team. My team is mapped to the Western United States. So if you're an organization mapped to basically any company west of the Mississippi, you're probably talking to my team if you're interested in Freshworks for the mid-market region. And I've been here for a year. It's been crazy. We're fast growing. It's such an exciting time to be at Freshworks. I'm honored to be a part of this team. And it is just the beginning. Prior to joining this team, I was at Salesforce for about 10 years. I grew my career there from entry-level SDR, moved into enterprise account executive, and then finished my last role there in 2018 as a sales leader within the enterprise business unit. So I've been selling for a lot of years. I'm starting to date myself, I'm sure, but really excited to be part of the Freshworks team here today and on this panel.
I love it. I love it. Great story. And I want to do a quick couple of shout outs to some of our community here. It's always interesting to see the wide spectrum of titles we get. We've got Alex, an account executive over at Rehearsal. We have Alex, another Ayush Sharma, sales manager at Whatfix, product marketing manager over at People.ai, Dimitri, director of sales, mobile dimensions, Brady Field, sales enablement manager at Arctic Wolf. Tim, sales ops specialist. We got all sorts of folks here hanging out with us. This is really cool. So
nice.
Let's dive in. So just to kind of set the tone, what we're really going to be wrestling with is this question, these two questions here. Why focus on a sales team's happiness? And is a happy team a high performing team? And hopefully by the end of this, you'll have some empirical data that you can go and inform your strategies, maybe shoot it up to your exec team and say, hey, look, we got to double down in this arena. Here's why. Harvard told me we had to do it. And that's what we're going to be wrestling with. And we'll go through some of the details of the actual study, where these numbers are coming from. But essentially, Freshworks, our partners at Freshworks, commissioned a Harvard Business Review analytics survey to understand two things. How does happiness and culture impact sales performance, and by what degree? And then what are the factors that positively and negatively impact a sales team's happiness? So those are really the questions that we're going for. Mervik, before we kind of dive into it, were you shocked at some of the data that came back from this research?
It was interesting. There were some things that I absolutely, knew, right, that would impact sales performance. And there were definitely some things where I really wanted to double click, which we'll talk about a little bit more, that I was definitely surprised by. And just based on my experience, there's some really good information here that really tells us how it's going to shape the happiness of sales teams today, moving forward. Also, as we, I started, I think I did my first sales hacker webinar with you in March or April. We were still trying to work out the COVID situation, and we're still in it, right? So being able to build happiness and culture in the time of COVID, and whatever this may turn out to be in the future, I was really surprised about what came back, and really excited to share the findings.
Yeah, totally. And I agree. Now more important than ever, I've read some crazy stats about like 1/3 of North Americans being like depressed right now with everything that's going on. So super important to have this top of mind for any leaders and really anyone on the call. So going to the specifics. So this is kind of the methodology. This was the actual study that was conducted. So it was 300 plus sales leaders were asked to rate their sales team's happiness on a scale of 0 to 10. So 0 to 7 was considered a less happy group. 8 to 10 would be a very happy group. And then basically we're asked a series of questions, and that's where this research and these findings are going to be pulled out from. So without further ado, Mervik, let's start diving in.
Absolutely, Scott. So when we commissioned this study, there were really three areas that we wanted to look at, and we'll be looking at as we review the findings. Number one, sales team's happiness and its outcome on business metrics. Number two, factors contributing to a salesperson's happiness and unhappiness. And number three, the crucial role of sales tech and the CRM in terms of the team's happiness using that technology. So it's one part culture that we're looking at and what creates that happiness, and the other part really technology, which is a huge part that drives the metrics and results for the sales team.
Totally.
Yeah.
All right. Here's the first kickoff. So 81% of very happy groups reported increases in annual sales, while only 59% of those less happy groups, those 0 to 7, reported similar results. So I want to hit people right off the get-go. That's a pretty large difference. We see already happy teams increase their annual sales, while only 59%. What do you make of that? That's kind of in line with hopefully what we're going to continue to see through this presentation.
Yeah. I mean, it makes sense, right? Very happy groups do tend to put up more numbers, and that's fair. But the 81% of happy groups seems much larger than I ever expected. And yes, less happy groups, there's lots of different factors that make them unhappy, right? Which we'll dive into here. But that took me by surprise. It was one of those things where I was saying, wow, if we have not invested as an organization, any organization out there, globally or throughout the world on making sure that our teams are happy and understanding also what is defined by happiness for our sales teams. And it could be different in every organization. We need to be able to peel back that onion layer by layer, right? What defines happiness? What does it mean to be happy at this organization, selling this product under this leadership? And to really get to know intimately what defines happiness, because that 81% number is higher than I ever expected it to be, and could be higher in some cases as well. So I was surprised by that. And then moving into really what we find here as the categories, where the very happy teams performed better on every metric, whether it's customer satisfaction, percent of sales team hitting quota, the annual sales and productivity. I mean, these are all the things that sales teams live by to be successful, right? They outperformed the less happy group in every category within this study.
Wow. Pretty dramatic difference across the board, particularly in the percentage of sales team hitting quota, and then opening new business. I think those are the biggest contrasts. But that's pretty crazy to see it like that. And to also know that, there's many sales teams out there that, don't think about this every day. It's just the happiness of their teams. And when it's put like this, because you imagine if we tried to quantify that we're looking at millions of dollars, depending on the size of your business, multi-millions of dollars, depending on your size of your business, in that amount of lift for a team.
Yeah. And also I mean, this tells me, right, these staggering results where the very happy teams outperform the less happy teams, that maybe businesses don't even realize that their teams aren't happy. That they don't realize what it is that defines happiness. That because in an organization where growth and revenue and metrics are so important, and that we're creating this culture within this generation of the workforce where you have to be very results driven to be successful, we might not even realize that there is an underlying part of their thinking process that's part of the subconscious that doesn't address the happiness outside of the metric. So this for me was really eye-opening. And the good news is there's a lot we can do to change that. There's lots of best practices we can share based on these findings to turn that around and make sure we're not leaving money on the table because our teams are unhappy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
And Maravik, how think of what happens when you just have like a 1% better win rate or a 1% better open rate or reply rate to emails. Like we all in sales are fighting for those tiny incremental gains every day. And then looking at this, if we turned around and spent some of that energy on happiness, we would see the biggest gains by far.
Absolutely. I mean, we're spending money on new technology every day. We're spending new ways to on sales training to get an open on a cold call email, right? We're spending technology on that allows us to see if someone is opening our emails, right? The forecast tools we're using. We just implemented a new one here at Freshworks. Those kinds of things. There's a lot of money going out the door for those things that we think could define how we execute on the revenue number. But there's other things that could be the softer side of sales that could allow us to really gain that revenue. And in some ways, based on this study, quantify it, right?
Yeah.
So I'll just move on to this also very important role, Scott. I'll let you take that in.
So now we're moving on to the factors contributing. So we've seen the importance of happiness, and then what are those actual factors that contribute to a salesperson's happiness and unhappiness? This is an interesting one. 89% of the very happy group agree that sales team happiness is a strategic priority for their leadership. Break that down. What does that mean to you, Mary?
Yeah. So it's funny because on the previous slide, the very happy teams outperformed everyone that were less unhappy. And what we find in this study is that happy group, they actually know that happiness is a strategic priority for their leadership, right? So my notion of maybe they don't know, like, again, I was debunked on this slide that the happy people definitely know that is a strategic priority. We all know that individual contributors, account executives, sales folks, they don't, there's lots of studies out there that prove that folks do not leave a company. They leave managers, right? So if leadership is investing strategically on the happiness of their people, you then in result will have happier folks, happier groups of people who will outperform those who are less happy. 89% to me was high. I thought, it's kind of a strange question. How do you know your sales leadership is strategically prioritizing happiness, right? Well, it shows in some of the things that the companies do. It shows that they really do invest in the person and truly believe in the person and understand how happiness drives that individual, versus not, right? Versus going through the motions and doing forecast reviews and tell me about this deal and what are you going to do next? And I think there's another part of there that really speaks to making sure that we speak to the hearts and minds of our people. And that means knowing what drives our folks, both from a happiness perspective and from a metrics perspective. It's two different things that we really need to strategically prioritize as sales leaders.
Yeah. And so kind of put another way, if you've got a account executive team and that AE, 89% of the very happy group, those AEs know, and they said that their sales leader and leadership views happiness as a strategic priority.
Yeah.
That's huge. So making that known, being very vocal about that is massive. I love it.
Yeah,
I love it. Let's break
it.
that down a little further.
Yeah. So again, these are the categories, right? We asked the groups what improvements have been put in place for the sales teams at your organization over the past 2 years, if any. So the blue being the very happy teams and the green being less happy teams. Again, the very happy teams saw some improvements in every category. Career development is huge for folks. It's really, really important that while you're this hamster in a wheel day to day, kind of going through the motions and in the fun chaos of organizations, that you do understand your career trajectory and your path, and that there are training opportunities that are investing in you and your ability in professional development, right? And so very happy teams definitely have scored higher there in that category. One area, Scott, and I mentioned this earlier, that not surprised me, but really stood out to me was that very happy teams have seen improvement in diversity and inclusion, and by 36% and 25%. That to me, I didn't even realize it, but when I started my career 10 years ago, I didn't see very many women leaders of color, right? And I didn't see a lot of sales reps and account executives that looked like me. And I think that had I seen that, there would have been just a higher likelihood that I could have performed better, or just an inspiration that would have helped me throughout my career. But you're seeing now there's leadership, there's chief officers at organizations whose whole role is making sure we improve diversity and inclusion. At Freshworks, we're seeing women leaders being promoted into leadership. There's a woman I work with named Pinky on our onboarding team who was just promoted from individual contributor to sales leader as a woman of color, and that's fantastic. And I think that this is something that is a very important topic, especially today, that when we think through how we provide happy cultures, we need to allow for folks to see reflections of themselves in the diversity of the teams and individuals we hire. And this is a very male dominated space, right? It is tech sales. It is a technology sales where you have very assertive type A folks And we need to include women. We need to include diversity. We need to include more folks that look like other people within the diversity inclusion space so that we can help them thrive in that space and allow for inspiration to drive the performance as well.
Yeah, I love seeing any of those, D&I things quantified like this. It's showing it leads to an increased happiness in the overall team, which we just found out leads to an overall performance. So, you can conclude that diverse and inclusive teams perform better, which is huge. And I love seeing numbers like this come out. I'm seeing more and more companies pay attention to it. But anyone on the line who's maybe thinking about starting a D&I initiative at their company, leading that charge, because someone has to do it, because not everyone has a full head count. Taking facts like this and a snapshot of something like this is huge to get some buy-in from the top and say, hey, it's not only because it's the right thing to do, it also is going to drive more happiness and ultimately revenue as well. So I love that.
Yeah, I love that as well. And I'm just delving into this a little bit more just because it's an important topic. I don't mean that we should put quotas on diversity and inclusion hires, right? Because that creates a stigma for those being hired. That's part of the D&I candidate pool. It's about being conscious about our hiring practices. It's about making sure that we're looking at recent graduates from historical Black colleges, or looking at communities that might be underrepresented, and ensure we have an inclusive candidate process that really looks into that and includes that. So I love seeing the statistic, which is great. So moving on here. Yep.
Part of that quickly, we have a comment, and I agree. You hire on competency, but a lot of times what has happened is, they don't have a seat at the table. So we need to make sure we slow down our hiring process and have a diverse candidate pool to make that decision, make sure that we're making the right one.
That's exactly right. Yep.
Yeah, I love it.
Exactly right. Awesome.
All right. Let's move. Okay, let's do this. I'm super interested. Let's see. So we're going to do a quick poll.
Me too.
I'm going to launch it.
Yeah.
So which better describes the sales culture that you belong to? Is it goal-driven, work hard, play hard, supportive, social, or transparent? So we'll give some time. We see them rolling in. This is super interesting. I can't say anything when we're doing polls because I find if I say something, then I skews the results. So I'm just going to shut up and see what happens. But I think this is going to be super interesting. I personally know coming up what most of my sales cultures felt like, but I won't say it just yet.
Yeah. I think this is always the best part of this webinar, these audience interactions, which I can't wait to talk about.
Yeah. All right. We'll give it 3, 2, 1. Okay. So we have the large majority, so 52% coming from goal-driven, more than half. And then work hard, play hard, 34%. I know that was drilled into me and a lot of the cultures growing up. So that's 86% are falling into the goal-driven, work hard, play hard, 86%. And then we have 26% supportive. That is awesome. Social, 4%. Transparent, 16%. Maravik, looking at that, is that what you thought we would see?
Yeah. And I mean, in terms of just the poll itself, I was always taught in my career that revenue is king, right? I mean, just by nature, sales is a results revenue driven industry organization. So work hard, play hard really drives into that. Being goal driven really, plays into that. And so I really thought that's what, that's my sales culture. So I answered that. But we'll be really surprised to kind of see the findings of the Harvard Business Review.
This is super interesting. Let's move. Let's move into it.
Do you see the poll on my screen or the slides?
I'm seeing the slides. Yeah.
Okay, great. Great.
Perfect.
So just going back into the results here. So factors contributing to salesperson's happiness and unhappiness is the impact of culture code words. So for all our audiences out there, 66% of all respondents agree typical sales culture can work against sales team happiness, right? So the goal driven, work hard, play hard we found in the study makes a less happy sales culture. And that supportive, social, and transparent makes a very happy sales culture, which was really interesting. And again, right, I think what here, when you're taught from a very young age in your sales career that I literally ask sales leaders, like, what can I do to make an impact as an SDR or a BDR or an AE? And the first answer I'll get is revenue is king, right? That tends to move me into, okay, I've got to drive that goal. But it's two parts. Again, like I said earlier, it is one part metric and one part being clear on the goals to execute on as an individual contributor of a sales team. The other part is the soft stuff, right? It's the inspiring the hearts and minds of our people by getting to know them individually and understanding how they're motivated. Providing a supportive space, right, to learn and grow. Not every deal is going to be perfect, Scott. We both know that, right? Not every deal is going to be a revenue generating ace deal to a close. We're going to skid our knees in the process. We're going to make mistakes, but the way in which we rise from those mistakes should be supportive, should be an ability to learn, should be spoken about in transparency on how we can fix those things. What really I realized from the study is that when we do a goal driven, work hard, play hard, revenue is king mentality, is we're not taking a step back to say, what did we do well? Let's celebrate that. What did we not do well? And ensure we create a post-mortem conversation around what we can do to make it better. So it's really two parts, right? Which I found really surprising, but pleasantly surprised that we need to create more culture code words that speak to the softer side of sales for making a happy sales culture.
Yeah. I think this was one of the biggest kind of myths that seemed to be busted by the research and data that came back, which I, just like you, I like. I think we need to definitely move away from that. I did a post this morning on LinkedIn about this work hard, play hard, alluding to this webinar. And someone said, which I said in our pre-webinar call, sometimes that's just the code word for work really, really hard and then hit the bars and try and forget how overworked you are, and they call it work hard, play hard. So I love these, using more terms like supportive, social, transparent, and not just using those words, but also living them is so important. I think of all the bosses and mentors that I've had that have stuck with me and had a big impact, they were the bottom three, not just the top one.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah, those are definitely words of true leaders, right? Who are making sure the softer side of sales is also exposed in the culture.
Totally. Quickly, Maravik, I'm going to quickly stop you there. Let's go to a quick question. I like this question. It's very relevant. Matt Kessel, thanks for the question. What are some things your organization are doing to support your sales folks in a work from home environment? For example, I understand there's people providing money for the folks to outfit their home office. Any best practices out there? I'll quickly jump in. I know for us, a lot of people are missing some of like the learning and development that comes with being in an office, right? You kind of learn from osmosis. You learn from people around you. You can hear what a salesperson is saying. You can interact with leaders more. So there's this learning development component that I think is a lot of people are missing from home. So not only just giving them a stipend to get some equipment, but also maybe ramping up outside learning and development opportunities. There's different sales courses, marketing courses out there. I think that's a big one. Particularly, I see a lot of these young folks. They're a year into their AE career or just started a BDR job, and that'd be very difficult to be working from home in that environment and not being exposed to, what the majority of us were in an office setting.
Yeah, absolutely. Those are all really great points, Scott. Yeah, I think first and foremost, you need to have the basic necessities at home, right? Whether it's like a riser or like a better keyboard or an ergonomic chair, there's hopefully an area in the budget that will address for moving swiftly to work from home strategies. So that's kind of a basic necessity, and we definitely offer that here at Freshworks. What I think we did, very very well is we led with transparency. Again, like part of the culture words. This created, I mean, COVID created a sense of just unprecedented, ambiguous, variables in our work environment. So it was a little scary for a lot of folks. And I think what our CEO did very well was just lead with transparency. Garish Matharuth and we all did an all hands right at the beginning of the shelter in place and the work from home transition. We discussed that at this time, we're financially healthy and don't intend to lay off any folks. We're a company that's been very lucky that we've been able to stick to that promise, which is nice. There's a lot of companies out there. I'm seeing folks who have had, who have had to make the difficult choice of letting people go just based on the business and what they're doing. So just leading with transparency, and making sure that no one was going to be left behind and that we were going to communicate the strategies of our business model every step of the way, coming from the top down. The other thing I felt like specifically how my team felt supported right away was our data team really put together some mappings of industries that we should try and shift to have conversations about Freshworks. We had to reconfigure some of those top 25 accounts that made sense in January versus some things that didn't make sense now. So there was a lot of investment. We worked quickly. Our team worked quickly to move 3,000 of our employees to work from home, and it took the entire team to get it done. But it does lead with making sure we provide the basic necessities at home. It does make sure that we are transparent with our people. And also, last but not least, adjusting to this life, right? I mean, I have a 2-year-old running around and a 7-year-old asking me for a snack in the middle of a webinar or a conference call. And that's just got to be okay. We have to just be okay with the norms of today. And I feel very supported in that way working for a company like Freshworks.
I love it. Where's the cameo this time around from your 7-year-old?
I know.
Let's get it. Let's get a cameo.
I know. Pretty shortly here, I'm sure my 2-year-old will be running around with Mickey Mouse ears. So we'll see.
I love it. All right, let's move on to a couple other factors contributing to a salesperson's happiness. Great question again, Matt. That was awesome.
Awesome. So here, we're moving into the technology piece. Earlier we talked about the 3 different points, and what we found also that the sales technology and really the role of the CRM and a team's happiness is pretty crucial. 71% of all respondents agree that poor sales tech can negatively impact sales team happiness, right? And Scott, I'm sure you can imagine having had some variation of all kinds of sales tools. I remember, even before Salesforce, I was using like Excel or I don't know, SharePoint. It was just like pieces of technology kind of, duct taped together to make sense of our data. So this makes sense to me. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think it's reflected with a lot of the conversations I kind of hear in the market, but I think it is overlooked by a lot of companies, right? They sometimes look for, ways to save money, or they look at things that serve leaders, not the individual. When I talk to the majority of like the 1%ers, the top performers in sales, they wouldn't accept a position that didn't have, their table stakes kind of sales tech stack. So that's all stuff that you have to keep in mind. These are decisions that have a really big impact. And Alex says, yeah, bad tech, slow workflow equals pulling my hair out. Couldn't agree more.
Yeah, exactly.
And I got a lot to pull out now.
Yeah. There you go. Okay, well then, so moving on to that specific topic here, and really when we think about what it really means in terms of tech and CRM and teams happiness, uh, just 30% of respondent organizations report the evaluation of the tech from the sales team is one of their top criteria when choosing their sales technology, right? So 30% was very surprising to me. That really tells me that when we think about technology and CRM and what we're really looking to leverage, the voices of those individual users and those contributors are not being heard, which is interesting.
This is wild. So again, put another way, this is people who are buying the sales technology for sales professionals aren't getting it in the hands of the sales professionals to evaluate before they're making that purchasing decision, which is kind of crazy. That's like, buying someone a car out of the blue and they're going to be driving it all day and not asking them, what car they want to drive. That's
exactly.
crazy.
Yeah. And see, the thing is, now that I reflect back on the conversations that I've had, both here and elsewhere, yeah, I'm talking to IT, right? Because usually they understand the tech stack when they're evaluating an engagement platform. I'm talking to product managers, right? Because they know and they understand what different products that this technology is going to need to fit into and the integrations associated to that. And while I do have conversations with the business and I do understand the pain points with the business, I can see how there's room for improvement, right? That percentage should be higher. It should be over 50% of organizations that say that the sales team's criteria is really taken into account when choosing a technology. So that also surprised me in this study as well, Scott.
Yeah, that's super surprising. Scott Roy says 30% isn't surprising to me. We work with what a miss by these companies. So he's agreeing with us. Yeah, good commentary.
Yep.
All right.
Exactly. So then, when we think about, right, the sales team doing non-selling stuff, obviously, right, less happy group was more likely than the happier group to report that their CRM requires too much time for non-selling admin tasks. I've been there. I've seen that. Literally, there are some things, that I've seen in the past that just confuse me. Like, why does it take 7 different steps and like giving up my left lung to like dead out an opportunity in our CRM, right? Why does it take so many time and so many steps? And once again, I think it leads to the fact that we are less, we cater less to the individual user and the actual individual person who's having to make those changes, and more about how it reflects on management and how management can make decisions based on the data. And again, I think that's a balance. While it's important, like myself as a sales leader, to know that the data is in our central repository and our CRM and our technology, we need to streamline this process a bit more for individual contributors. And we need to make sure that they are top of mind. The end user is at the top of mind and feeling empowered when they use the solution. So, our next poll question.
Let's launch it. All right. CRM should help manage the sales team or enable the sales team. Let's see. Again, we won't say our preferences quite yet. No skewing.
Yeah.
All right. As that's going in, I'm going to sneak in another question from the community if you're up for it. All right. This is a great question. As a sales leader, how do you balance between the need to manage sales happiness and putting in place measurement metrics that may invariably put the sales team under pressure? So we have KPIs. Sometimes, we have to enforce those KPIs. One can think that if you enforce them too heavily, happiness is going to go down. What is that kind of balancing act for you, Meredith?
It's definitely a balancing act. But we have to be clear, right, of what we know. We know that this team, this industry, this type of sales organization, our number one overarching goal, right, is to build revenue and obtain new customers and evangelize the product. So that's just part of the role, and that's not something you're into. You're probably in the wrong role, right? Like full transparency.
Yeah.
But it's one thing to drive the number and not peel back the why, which could lead to unhappiness. It's one thing to only drive the number and only drive results, right? And it's like the carrot versus the stick, right? You can use that stick and you can use that number to drive results, but in the end, I'm not sure you're building the happiest culture. So I do things like, while we have a regular cadence with my team. Number one, we're going to take a look at your deals. What do they look like? Where do you stand from a commit perspective, and where does revenue come in for you? Right? That we just need to be clear on the number. But with that comes with, how will you get there with my support? How will we do it together in areas that we're improving upon and investing in career development for you to be better in the future? It's about also not leading as just a leader. Like I'm not someone who leads this team and I'm their manager and I'm the authority. I'm one of them. We're one whole team. And while these numbers drive us right on a dashboard, we all drive for that larger goal as a team. So we need to scale the best practices. We need to share our successes. We need to feel good about interacting and coming in and doing our best work every day together versus just the number, right? It's about improving ourselves as a team and looking at the dashboard as a way to measure friendly competition. But in the end, if we don't achieve it as a team, then that's a setback and an opportunity for us to do so, right? And really playing as one team, to balance that out with the number.
I love it. And we got some further commentary from the community. Melanie says, agrees. All about communication, having that discussion. You have to be direct, but also show empathy, show care, and show understanding, and show appreciation. So I love it.
Absolutely.
All right.
Great words.
We have our results. Let's end that poll now. All right. So 85% say CRM should help enable the sales team. Only 15% wanted to manage the sales team. I wonder if that 15% are the managers and the leaders on the call. That might be. I don't know.
Probably.
But
yeah.
What are your thoughts here, Meredith?
Yeah. I think in the end, if I could only choose one, like your poll says, I would say enable, right? Enable allows for collaboration. Enable allows for ways for the end user to feel empowered. Enabling our team in so many ways with technology and the other things is a great way to look at how we can improve and create happy sales culture. So in the results below here, I'm going to just chop out of there. Oh, in the results below here, right, what we're finding is the less happy group was 17 percentage points more likely than their happier peers to report that their sales CRM is too focused on managing the sales force as opposed to enabling it. And again, it goes back to, right, the technology, the multiple steps to using the technology, all the data that we need to input in a non-seamless way. A lot of technology out there in the world, some of the number one CRM solutions out there in the world were really built for leaders and managers, right? It was about making sure that the leaders can make business decisions based on data. And we almost need to switch that. We need to do a 180 on that. And while management is still very important to making decisions, the very decisions that leaders are making are based on what the individual contributors are having to input. So enabling them, empowering them, streamlining that process and that CRM, making it more targeted and focused on the user will only help the data that's pushed up to management and making those decisions. So, and that's what I really love about Freshworks. And I don't want to be salesy here. I'm not trying to pitch, right? But when I think about why I joined Freshworks, and at the very core of the company, we really do think about the end user. We really think about that individual person on the other side of that interface that really has to make all of the inputs and all of the data and all of the information from a ground level to push up to leadership and to management. I think that's really, really important to note that it's sometimes there are technologies out there that are maybe top technologies in the industry that are a lot more than what companies need and what organizations need. And we need to clean that up, and we need to make sure we're taking a look at and focusing on managing the individual contributor. And when I think about that, I think about other technologies that I've used where their use case just becomes larger and larger, and making edits or changes or configuring the platform turns into a 30, 60, 90 day request queue, right? Internally. Whereas here, I'll tell you from my experience at Freshworks, I let a person know that there's something off with the way we're calculating or tabulating or streamlining or the drop down menu for a specific category, and we're off to the races making that configuration. That is what it means to have the end user in mind, and that making configuration changes or drop down menu changes or adding a field shouldn't break your CRM. You should be able to configure that and empower your users on a day-to-day basis using that technology.
Totally. Yeah. And I feel like almost the irony there is the more you focus on enablement and the more you focus on the end user, you'll enable them to want to use it more. Therefore, you're going to collect more data. The activities are easier to track, and ultimately it becomes easier to manage them. So it's not like so much a give and take. If you focus on enablement, the management stuff by proxy kind of comes as well.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You got it. And so moving on here, finally, what we've found, I just want to make sure, Scott, you can see my whole screen here.
Yes.
Yeah, something's doing some funky. Okay. So finally, what we've really found is that a very happy group reports that the ideal CRM experiences really lead to happy teams. And again, these categories, right? Just the percentages are off the charts compared to the less happy teams. Helpfulness to the sales force, time required to accomplish tasks, ease of use, like some of the very pillars that I believe our Freshsales CRM solution here at Freshworks really does fundamentally offer our customers, right? So this was really cool to see, and it really does validate the work and the innovation that we're doing here in terms of the CRM that we provide. These are 3 areas that I know our Chief Product Officer is absolutely invested in making sure that we really do put this at the forefront of how we create, develop, and innovate our products.
Mm-hmm. This is interesting. This is some of the biggest gaps we've seen all day through this whole presentation.
Yeah.
Those are massive. Yeah. And I think of just my personal experience, right? And what affects my feeling like I had a good week and not having a good week is usually comes down to how much time I have to spend doing, admin tasks and things that are not moving the needle for our organization. So the more time I can be doing that, the happier I am, for sure. So yeah, I like it. We have some great questions rolling in, but let's go through and kind of break down some more kind of the key takeaways, and then we'll kind of do rapid fire Q&A at the end. Keep your questions coming. We'll get to them, but we've got some takeaways we want to run through first.
Yeah, we'll go through this quickly. We'll share the slides. But I mean, as everyone has probably already put together, your choice of CRM is really key to your sales team's happiness, right? That leads to that performance, that leads to that end result, that leads to the revenue achievements. And it really starts with your CRM and making sure that happiness is created here. And just to really wrap this session up into a nice little package. Um, these are ways in how we can really ensure that organizations or audiences, folks out there, begin to replicate and invest and really double down in creating these high performing sales culture, right? I think the three takeaways here are: be more social, transparent, and supportive. um, I think an example there is making sure we understand the why of what we're doing, right? A lot of the times we are um, driving pipeline, we're making cold calls, we're sending custom emails out, we're doing all of these things. And in the flurry, we need to get to the why for our people. Understanding the why is making sure that they understand the goals of the company, being transparent on what we've achieved, and being supportive in an environment that's usually fast paced, very metrics driven, and really allow for more of the softer side of sales to be at the forefront of the organization. Um, Obviously, avoid pitting salespeople against one another. That's a huge one. Again, right? Dashboards are there to encourage friendly competition. But it's never been my style to compare one person versus the other, my top performer versus another one. It's always my style to pair them up and create a collaborative, supportive environment on what my account executive, who maybe is challenged within their territory and obtaining the revenue goals, and pairing them up with someone who's been very successful, to share the best practices and the mind share and all the goodness that comes with that, and encouraging them to support each other versus pitting them against each other. And of course, empowering the team with the right CRM. I think it really starts there. It creates just a sense of ambiguity if we don't have the right CRM and the right process in place, right? There's a lot of gray area and a lot of questions if we don't have the right CRM. So we need to make sure that the technology is in place to really drive the happiness around the metrics and the softer part of sales. And Scott, I think we talked about this one, right? Magnify each success, big or small. I'm sure you have some examples there that you can share.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that one's huge. Now more than ever, I think when people are working from home, and wins, quite frankly, are harder to get than ever. So make sure you're celebrating all of them. One thing we've done at Sales Hacker is we just created, whatever instant messaging you're using, whether it's Slack or Teams or whatever. Get in there and create a channel to celebrate people's wins. So anyone doing cool things, winning a new customer on the marketing side, killing an event or a virtual event or a project, throw it in there, and just have a constant stream of wins. It goes a long way right now.
Absolutely. And it doesn't have to be $1 million deal that we celebrate, right? It can be, we broke into a really difficult account that told us they didn't need us, or it could be that we got a response from a CEO who really liked our message. It's those things that we really need to be able to celebrate as well. It isn't always that huge deal, right, that we throw a big party for. And then, and the last two is define successful sales processes. I cannot tell you enough that there are folks who still, don't understand, like, what is our sales playbook? What is our playbook for small deals and tactical deals and strategic deals? So making sure you have that written down, documented, shared, but also re-emphasized every time you do deal reviews on what is the sales process. How do we execute on revenue? What do we do with a signed order form? How do we process that internally? All of those things, right? We need to define the process. If it's not written down, it doesn't exist. So we need to make sure things are written down. There are successful processes that are distributed out to the team that they can follow. Last but not least, emphasize the coaching and the skill development. I think it's when we're moving so quickly and things are moving. I feel like today's Tuesday and it feels like it's Thursday. I mean, it's kind of that week, right? So making sure that we take the time we pause, we look at skill development and coaching. For my team, I'm sitting for every call that I can sit on. I'm there with you. I'm with that person. I'm engaged in the conversation, or I'm just listening and I'm slacking you some feedback regarding the question you just asked, or drilling down on the question so you can get more of the nuts and bolts of why they're evaluating us from a personal level and from a business critical perspective. So coaching and skill development is super crucial as we look to really create happy and high performing sales teams.
Mhm.
So with that, yeah, I think this concludes the part of our presentation. I think we'll have a sales quiz out to all the audiences here. Take a quiz. Let us know. Is your sales culture great? Do you think it needs improvement? I think this is a great way for you to be able to lead that conversation at or your organization and find success post this webinar.
I love it. Thank you so much, Maravik. And yeah, we'll be sending out the quiz in a follow-up, probably with the recording or right after the recording. So make sure you do take that quiz. Maravik, thank you so much. I'm going to steal your last 3 minutes and just rapid fire some questions, and we'll try and get them in because there's some great questions. All right, here's one. I really like this one. Okay, how do you? And it's a tough question, but how do you balance sales comp goal adjustments due to circumstances outside of a rep's control, with major decline in revenue across many organizations? What's the right balance from a business perspective? This is a major cause of unhappiness or frustration across sales orgs, specifically today. But there's no black and white easy answer.
Yeah, this is a good one, guys. And as a company where we had to make those adjustments because of COVID, we had to make that decision to create happiness as well, right? The numbers we committed to in January are not going to be the same. What we're experiencing with COVID and maybe other things we're experiencing are just things that we've never seen before. So we have to make room for that. So yeah, we've had to adjust some of our numbers. I'm happy to share offline some of the details on that, but making sure that you speak to your teams about how the revenue is impacted at your organization. Before you make a hard and fast rule about adjusting compensation in a difficult time, right? Because this is indeed a difficult time, we need to have a conversation about what those hard bullet points are. Yes, COVID is a blanket difficult time, but how does it impact your sales organization? Are we seeing less leads? Are we seeing more people not taking conversations? Are we seeing deals that are paused due to a lack of funding? I mean, we need to put some measurement around that kind of decision. But yeah, we've had to do it. It was fairly done. It took our finance team, our analytics team. It took us listening to our sales contributors and individual contributors to make sure we understand the problem and put together a solution and plan to really ensure that through these COVID times, we are responding to what could be a lack in revenue. So yeah, I think it's a balance. I think it takes a lot of smart people at your organization to run the numbers and the data. And it takes a very collaborative and inclusive decision with leaders and individual contributor feedback to ensure you're doing the right thing.
Yeah, I think it's a fantastic answer. And put kind of another way is just, whatever your decision is show that work. Show the work of how your finance, your analytics, all the work that goes into making the decision, whether you stay at the current comp or you adjust accordingly. Just like on math tests back in the day, show your work. People really appreciate that transparency more than ever. Maravik, that was so much fun. You are an absolute wealth of knowledge. This reporting and research you guys did is so cool. I hope that was helpful for all those that joined us. I know I learned a ton, and certainly going to inform some decisions of mine and our organization moving forward. So, Maravik, thanks again. And for all those who joined us, there was lots of you. Thank you for the awesome questions. I always appreciate how thoughtful the questions are that we get. And until next time.
Yeah, thanks so much, Scott. If anyone out there has any additional questions, please reach out to me, maravik.becker@freshworks.com, or on LinkedIn. Happy to share. But it's always a pleasure, Scott. Looking forward to our next one.
Sounds good. We'll make it happen. See you,
All
everyone.
right.